whether you're a new brand, regional brand, something incredibly seasoned, I think speaking to where you're already doing well is very helpful. If you've had a tremendous program at a competitive brand, maybe don't go into all the nuances and details of it during that RFP or in that submission process, but certainly speaking to the success of that placement, I think is helpful.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on how to crack national chains beverage program. We have our speaker of the webinar, who's Evan. He's a senior account manager at IMI Agency. We have Sid as well, who is the CEO and founder of Beverage Trade Network that also organizes International Bulk Wine and Spirit Show in San Francisco. So I'll give it to you, Sid, now to proceed further. Maybe just quickly tell them what is going to be the key deliverables from this webinar and a little bit of introduction of Evan as well.
Sure. So I think just to set some context here, IMI Agency is one of a very few companies that sort of work with this big chains, right? They are the gatekeepers, I would say. They are the ones who you would want to work as well, and they are working on the side of the buyer, which means the chain. So just so that you understand, for them, they want to make sure that the hotel's beverage programs are profitable and are growing, and that's what they manage. So I think this is a very inside look on how they do business. I would definitely take this a chance to ask, Evan, as a selfish question as it can be, like be very specific. I think it will add context to the room. And I've got some amazing questions, almost 10 odd questions we have, which are very different of nature. So that we'll go through as well. In the meantime, keep thinking about a question that you think is relevant that you want to ask just for your own business. That's fine. This chance don't come again. Throw that in the chat, and then Ankita will start curating the questions, and we'll just have more Q&A as well. On the Evan's side, basically. So thank you, Evan. So appreciate your time here. I think we want to just make sure that before we obviously send the presentation out to the folks, we'll make sure that you are happy. You want to edit anything before it goes out, just so you know. So once you give us a green light, we'll send it to almost 105 people that have RSVP'd for this webinar. Why don't you, Evan, why don't you explain us about IMI, what they do, and then what your role in the companies, and then you just let's get right into it on how national hotel chains buy and what is the business behind the business. So over to you, Evan.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Sid and Ankita, for inviting me for this opportunity, and everyone who's joining live and after the fact. Thank you for your time, and I hope you find it fruitful. I'm a senior account manager at IMI Agency. I've been here for about 6 years now. And prior to coming into this role, I was a buyer. I was overseeing food and beverage services, and beverage is my background, developing programs for restaurants and bars and nightlife concepts, and managing people and teams. So it's great to be on this side, helping other people with their national strategy as it relates to beverage training and education and merchandising those brands. As you shared, Sid, IMI is a third-party beverage marketing agency. We're very large in the lodging segment, meaning that a lot of our clients are those large national hotel chains, Hyatt Hotels, Marriott International, Hilton, Ambridge, and others. So we're very proud of that. And it's not the only area that we work in. We also work in entertainment and dining and in nightlife and several other pieces of business. Obviously, today we're talking about hotels and the strategy for breaking the code. Not breaking the code, breaking through. So happy to be connecting. We're, as I shared, third-party beverage marketing agency. We work on behalf of our clients as a fiduciary agency. We're not connected to any liquor, beer, wine, or non-alc companies. We're wholly on behalf of our clients and looking at what's in their best interest. So looking forward to our time here together, and ready to go from here. A little bit of high level, what constitutes a national beverage program? In this this fluctuates a little bit from hotel group to hotel group, or from supplier to supplier, or distributor to distributor. So I just wanted to bring that into light for our conversation to start things off. Usually a national beverage program, there's one strategic buyer or leader who's overseeing that program in making the core program decisions. There will be a uniform program or several programs broken out, but certainly still with that national strategy, and a presence throughout the country. And there's a reason that I'm gonna come back to this about presence throughout the country. So even if that hotel chain maybe is just in 6 states, 10 states, something like that, because it's a national program, they will want to see distribution throughout their locations and their properties to make sure that they're able to have something that's succinct and presented through that national light, so that they can have training and other resources that they can share from a national perspective. And I referenced that because there's a couple of questions that Sid shared from attendees that are particularly relevant for that. And then from a national account perspective, from that hotel chain, they'd usually want to see a single point of contact at that supplier or distributor for ease of communication and more succinct communication. If they have to have someone from the east and someone from the west that they're speaking to, obviously that slows things down. So if your organization is able to identify one person that is going to be that hotel or the agency's point of contact on that portfolio, it really makes things a lot more streamlined and certainly preferred. National distribution, as I said, is really key. If a hotel chain has a national strategy, a national program, obviously it makes sense that they would want to make sure that the brands are available in all of those key markets, set up and ready to go. Not so much we can flip a switch if we get the placement, which unfortunately I know is sometimes the case as well. So again, just briefly, what constitutes a national program? And then I wanted to touch on what makes hotel programs unique. A lot of people who are new to hotels, who maybe have worked on restaurant programming, in nightlife or other national areas, or maybe it was just regional business previously. It is a much longer sales cycle, building that relationship, going through the RFP process. Sometimes those opportunities don't arise as often as they do in other segments. Often longer program periods. A lot of our lodging clients are 2-year programs. So once you're in, so to speak. But that also obviously presents more challenges as well. Multifaceted programs. What I mean by that is sometimes you'll have different expectations for banquets, for grab and go markets, which we all know are really of key importance these days. Sometimes for pool programs, there's other expectations that are laid out in that program. Sometimes it's different based upon tier levels. Maybe there's a tier 1 hotel that really has more esoteric spirits or higher end offerings. Maybe it's a tier 3 hotel in that example would have more commonplace brands that you'd find everywhere that are expected across the portfolio. So sometimes these are different nuances that exist in the lodging space. LTO opportunities, probably not super unique just to hotels, but the way that they end up coming into fruition and coming into light very oftentimes can be unique to hotels. Sometimes hotels don't want to have branded assets that are on the tables because it doesn't go along with the local appeal that they're going for, especially for a national beverage program. Sometimes it's a more localized asset or poster that might be placed around a hotel. Other times it could be more general, like you would find at a national chain restaurant. But those opportunities are a little bit more unique to hotels. Within hotel RFP programs, in those placements, there's oftentimes a lot more relationships that are at play. Because of the long cycle, people who have been calling on hotels for years usually have tighter and closer relationships that are going on, and just something to be aware of. and something to work towards as well. But be aware of those. And sometimes as there's transitions throughout a hotel client, you might have numerous people within the hotel environment that have a relationship with a brand or with a person at the brand. And that's wonderful if you're that person, and certainly, again, something to work towards so that you don't just know the buyer. You might know their other C-suite team members or people in the field, whether it's general managers or food and beverage directors that are out there. So the general RFP process. And sometimes for IMI, that's a little bit more unique than for others. But I'm just going to speak more in general here. And again, happy to entertain some questions. Definitely in your RFP submission, you should speak to marketing and program capabilities. That might be redundant in a given for some of you. It shouldn't just be talking about the particular wine or particular spirit. Talking about the marketing on a national level that goes on for those brands is really helpful, whether it's you're spending X amount on a national level to promote that wine through billboards, through TV, whatever that media spend might look like, but also what does that marketing opportunity look like for hotels to activate that brand? Are there stories? Are there POS assets that they can use to programming and making it more unique as opposed to just selling in that brand, just having it on the back bar? Are there unique serves that they can do for wine? Are there pairings that are built in different assets that hotels can choose to activate, whether that's on a national level or on a local level once the brand has been approved for usage? Happy to come back to that as well. I know that there's a lot of interest and questions surrounding diversity and sustainability and other qualifications. Certainly, this is a hot button topic for hotels as well as other chains. Diversity, national hotel chains want to support diverse brands. This is at the key. And I also understand that as part of that, you might have diverse owned brands that don't have national distribution. And we can come back to that as well, because there's a lot of opportunity outside of a national program and national strategy where there's ability for an independent brand, diversity owned or otherwise, to still gain some traction on a local level, even though that they might not be part of the national initiative that's been set forth. Sustainability, whether it's a biodiverse wine or an organic wine or any other initiatives that take place, certainly things that you should bring to light in your RFP submission. People often ask me if accolades are important, and if so, which ones? For every hotel, every buyer, it's different. It's not one size fits all. I would say if you have them, share them. There's nothing wrong with sharing awards and being proud of them. There's some suppliers that share after a wine or a spirit as part of a program. If it garners things after that placement's already been made, that just reinforces it. So it's always great to share those nuances, whether it's Wine Spectator or otherwise. It reinforces people's decision, and it makes them proud that they've selected that wine or spirit or beer to be part of the program. So I always think accolades are great to encompass, maybe not exclusively just accolades, but alongside your marketing tools and activation resources, it's great to share. Training, of course, is at the crux of everything these days. I think being able to speak to virtual and in-person training abilities, certainly virtual being a lot easier. If you're a larger brand, you probably have the ability to send in your distributor partners or local people into key markets to help with staff training at properties. It's key, especially if your wine's already in the program or your spirit, offering those up to reinforce those offerings. Maybe the staff hasn't really tasted that wine in a certain amount of time, or that spirit. Maybe if you have a spirit, maybe there's a new way that people are activating your brand in a competitive hotel environment where that would really resonate with guests of a specific chain. So sharing that nuance where you're able to, or where it makes sense. but definitely virtual and in-person training resources. We all know the challenges of staffing these days, so being able to provide resources quickly and simply. If things are age gated or if there's a lot of different things to sign up for, sometimes that's not as ideal, but I know that's the reality of it. If you're able to provide a training website and then also say, we can just send you videos that you can host elsewhere, I know that's really beneficial for our clients because it's flexible and it provides things that they need. So it's very helpful. Current successes in lodging and other national account on-premise areas, whether you're a new brand, regional brand, something incredibly seasoned. I think speaking to where you're already doing well is very helpful. If you've had a tremendous program at a competitive brand, maybe don't go into all the nuances and details of it during that RFP or in that submission process, but certainly speaking to the success of that placement, I think is helpful. If it's something a little bit distant, like you're doing well in XYZ Steakhouse for a specific wine, I think that nuance is good to share. Or maybe it's about a specific activation that you did or marketing and how that played out, kind of like a mini case study or a white paper. I think that's really helpful in any situation. And then people always ask me about retail presence. Do hotel groups or our chains that we work with want a brand that has retail presence? The answer here is it's not one size fits all. For some applications, our clients want to see a brand that has a strong retail presence because they don't want to have something that they need to explain a unique varietal, or other times they do. So it's a good blend. It depends on the space that they're looking to fulfill for that wine or spirit item or for that beer. Maybe beer a little bit less so, but that retail presence, there's not a one size fits all response. But I think being upfront about that is really important. If you have a wine brand that has some retail presence, but it's not on the end cap of every Kroger shelf, sometimes that's exactly what they want to hear. It's just that it's available in some grocery, but not at end cap. So just being able to speak to that and having that information at the ready is very helpful. And some of these for most of you are going to be commonplace and just things that you automatically do, but really, really important because of that long sales cycle and the promotion, and the program period being longer in hotels and lodging. Building and maintaining those relationships is really incredibly beneficial and important to the success of seeing your brands do well in hotels and lodging. And that doesn't mean just leading up to your brand getting placed. Following up, checking in with your agency partner, checking in with the buyer and the other people at the property. And again, if you know other people, if you know directors of food and beverage at individual hotels, if you know other people in the organization, certainly not going around that food and beverage director who is the ultimate decision maker or the buyer, but layering in ways that you can be helpful, resharing those training tools for your brands that are in the program. Maybe there's new marketing strategies that you can share. If you're in that client's market to meet them for coffee and connect and talk about their kids and other things that are going on are incredibly beneficial. Maintaining those relationships when you see them at industry events, whether it's conferences that the hotel client goes to or otherwise, your agency partners can share in a lot of situations which events that hotel or otherwise client is going to be participating in, what sort of things they're interested in, and certainly just reaching out to the clients directly when you have that relationship to find out what their client calendar looks like for the year ahead, what events they plan on attending, and connecting with them certainly at those events. Samples. In a lot of situations, samples are encouraged after the RFP submissions take place. I think always following up, always being generous with those. There's some suppliers that I've seen where they send out samples preemptively, and obviously agency partners or the buyers are happy to share, in most cases, mailing address for those. Sometimes groups are more stringent that they only want to see samples that are requested and during the RFP process as opposed to throughout the year. But if you have something new and that you're excited about, maybe just hit the send button and drum that up. It's also a good way to keep that relationship going. And then you can reach out to that person and say, hey, we're really excited about this new rosé we picked up. I think you'll enjoy it with your friends and family. I would just caution you about your follow-up. Obviously, you just want to make sure that they enjoyed it, but don't really push them for serious feedback on that item if it was just sent kind of mid-program type of thing, as opposed to for consideration during a specific program cycle. So just, I've had people tell me, well, it's just for you to enjoy with your friends and family. And I think that's kind of the nicest thing that you can say, is that it's to enjoy. Obviously, everyone knows that you would like something to happen with that wine, and that's known by the buyers as well. Knowing the client's portfolio, being able to speak to and have your own knowledge to share with your marketing team and otherwise about what that hotel portfolio looks like. What's the messaging? Who is their core hotel guest? Who's coming into that hotel, restaurant, and bar who's maybe not a guest? What does that look like? So not necessarily from the perspective for you to share back with the client and the buyer, but being familiar with it as you're going through and building your submission is really helpful. Understanding the current program. You might not have current business, but knowing what's currently in place is incredibly helpful. So if you do have an RFP or a meeting on the horizon, scheduling time to go into a local property, asking your agency partner or the hotel buyer directly, again, for the current program, so you can see what the Chardonnay is, what spirits are mandated, how they're mandated. Is there a pool program? Getting a lot of your questions answered maybe before you build out your deck could be incredibly helpful. And if you do get a meeting, which isn't always the case, we know that, and we know that's always the goal as well. I would request and recommend that you make it a conversation. The meetings are never long enough. We know that everyone has larger and larger portfolios of wine and spirits and beers that they want to speak to, or all of the above. But still finding a way to make it conversational as opposed to just speaking to them like I'm doing now, but really making it engaging, making sure that you're talking about the points that they're interested in. And I think if you adopt that technique of making it conversational, you'll really see that resonate as opposed to just walking through your slides. But I also recognize that it's incredibly challenging because you have a limited time window for that meeting. Which leads me to my next bullet point, taking advantage of opportunities to get in front of that buyer and their fellow colleagues outside of RFP meetings. RFP is a really busy time. Everybody wants to have time with the buyer during that window, which is not always the case. So if you're going to be in that particular market where the buyer is, if you're going to be at a conference, if you're going to be at one of their hotels, or maybe that they're going to be traveling for some other reason, finding an opportunity to meet them in another market is just fine as well. Usually the clock is not as stringent as it is during that RFP meeting. So talking to them in another place and time, maybe it's 3 months before, maybe it's 6 months before, but can still be really beneficial to the relationship, them getting acquainted and familiar with your brand and your portfolio. So those opportunities are really crucial. And then, of course, as things come up with your brands, with your portfolio, with your distribution, making sure that you keep your agency partner and the client abreast to that is really crucial, and certainly as much notice as possible is really appreciated, specifically relating to distribution updates and pricing. But again, the fun stuff as well. If you recently acquired a brand, or you have a new brand that you just came out with. Again, I'll go back to my comment about samples. If it's new to your book and you have access to samples, or if it's something new that you just kicked off, getting samples out are always welcome. Sharing information is really key. And I do find it helpful if you copy the agency that's involved for the hotel group as well, so that they have the ability to share out if there are distribution updates. Sometimes we have communication tools directly to the hotels. So we want to make sure that we get that out in a timely manner as well. But I know Sid has some questions for me, and hopefully I did well and didn't go too fast. And
no, I think you set a very nice foundation, but I think the real meat, I'm sure, will come from some questions, because as I said, like a lot of suppliers have that quality and the size that they're dealing with change. So I'm assuming that brands are aware of some basic qualification, and you may correct me, Evan, but I'm assuming that you need a good solid national distribution footprints, big supply. Obviously, if your aim is to go national, and we're talking about pretty much a lot of locations here, so you need to show consistency of supply, a proven track record, and a good distribution footprint, right? So like who can service that sort of model. Apart from that, now let's go in some of the questions that stood out for me. I think this one was very nice. What are the biggest challenges that national hotel chains are facing post-pandemic as it relates to the core beverage sales? I think this can help them by becoming a better listener, understanding the problem of the buyer and have an empathetic way of pitching their brand. So what's your take there?
Yeah, probably no surprise to this group. The biggest challenge across lodging, as well as other areas of business, is staffing. So talking about a tried and true, let's say you have tried and true brands in your portfolio. That's a wonderful thing to talk about, because your sales force at the hotels doesn't have the luxury of learning about more unique and up and coming brands. And so if it's a tried and true vodka or a Chardonnay or whatever the case might be, that might be really helpful, because they don't have the time to talk about some brand that is brand new. At the same time, providing resources, talking about those training videos and speaking to some of the items that I highlighted relative to training, because that's the challenge, or grab and go convenience and other things for tightly staffed hotels.
Got it. I think on educational programs, right? So I'll lead the question there as well. A lot of big companies or importers or even Southerns and, a lot of good distribution networks have their in-house educational teams. What are some good educational programs that can add solid value to this chains, which these big suppliers or importers can provide as a complement service, or let's say, which they're looking for in 2024?
Yeah, that's great. And certainly knowing that not every brand has a sales force that can go out there, or trainers or SOMs that can help with that training on a local level. Utilizing the distribution partners is tremendous. And I hopefully hotels are taking advantage of that ability from their distribution network. Going in there, obviously with approval, getting a contact list, which is sometimes hard to do, to have a national, here's your food and beverage director, or maybe it's of a smaller property, it could be the general manager, and hotels might not always share that. So if your local teams already know the appropriate people, first getting the approval from the national buyer to help and offer training on a local level, I think is step one. If they say yes, by all means, that local person making contact and saying, when would be a good time for us to come through and taste through your team on this wine that you're pouring by the glass. Maybe you're going to even offer to come in on 2 or 3 different dates just so you hit more staff throughout the course of the day. Certainly,
what do they want to learn? Like, what do you think are their pain points in education right now that the buyer would love? That, hey, if you taught them this, amazing.
It needs to be short and it needs to be succinct. I think talking about a unique story for the wine, whether it's oak fermented or stainless steel fermented, a quick story about it, as I said, and that's really it as it relates to wine. If you have a rum brand or a whiskey or a tequila, I think if that hotel maybe has one cocktail, but showing them a couple other ways that can be utilized, and certainly for a wine brand as well, maybe there's a great wine cocktail that team could execute. And you could show them and taste them through that and show the versatility of the brand. I think that's tremendous. Maybe there's a non-brand specific trick you can help with them with as well. Maybe it's something about getting that second glass of wine in front of the guest or that second cocktail. Maybe they already had an old fashioned and they'd like to try the whiskey in another form that's a little bit more unique. So knowing what plays well for your brand, and then using your time with that team very effectively. So yes, training them with a unique, fun story about that wine or that spirit, giving them the key points to be familiar with it. And if you happen to have any leave behinds, maybe it's a server cheat card or a bartender cheat card that talks about that wine or that spirit, malolactic fermentation or not. And then, fun uses, ways that it can be executed. And then I think an easy little sales technique about getting that extra sale is always good too, even though it's not brand specific.
Yep. Just one thing that came to my mind as well, Ivan, is out of curiosity, does this play against you or for you if you shared, hey, we did this amazing thing at this hotel chain, and I think there is something we can share and learn, and we can implement this whole thing at your hotel, and we've saw 12% increase in the sales. So do you think sharing other models or case studies is a good idea?
I think without getting too much into the detail, it can really be helpful. For example, not listing or not referencing that other hotel chain where you had that success as a courtesy to that other hotel as well. And don't go into a great amount of detail, but I think sharing a brief outline about a successful program that you had. Let's say it's a whiskey brand, and you did a flight, but instead of just doing a regular flight with the whiskeys, you had a QR code that people could scan and it helped walk them through it, knowing that there were staffing challenges, or that could be a wine flight as well. There's no reason it couldn't be any of the above. But I think keeping it a little bit more broad, but talking about the assets that you provided, the training tools that went along with it, telling the full story, but not going into a lot of detail, is courteous to your other hotel chain where you had that success, but it's also very fair to who you're presenting or talking to it about.
Cool. I think we on the maybe one more question that I may ask, which can help other people, which is the trends, right? Like what kind of products are really in demand that they're adding more? For example, non-alcoholic comes to my mind, So if you can throw us 3 or 4 categories between spirits and wines, which really they are looking for, to add, and then 3 or 4 which I think they are eliminating. That would, I think, add a lot of perspective.
Well, I'm not sharing anything that this group probably doesn't already know, but tequila I hear is hot. Whiskey is still incredibly popular and doing exceptionally well in hotels and beyond. Wine, I keep hearing more and more about wine cocktails, which is why I mentioned that briefly. I think showcasing different ways that wine can be utilized. Cocktails are king. I know in one of the questions that you shared with me said someone was talking about how cocktails are powerful. So if you're a wine brand and you have wine cocktails, then you're helping check that box. Yep. I think it also checks the the lower ABV as well. So maybe it's a wine spritz that you're crafting on site, and so you're checking all sorts of boxes.
The question there was particularly on, just double clicking on that cocktail question. Do you have any case studies of a boutique or a small, we're not talking about large brand here, any ways they penetrated or they got a placement and it had an RTD sort of element to it?
So not necessarily through a national program or national strategy. If you don't have national distribution, many times that RFP process may exclude you right out of the gate, because that person is looking to build a national program, of course, across their hotels. However, I usually talk to smaller brands, especially if they have a diversity element or something else that's incredibly enticing to hotel chains. The ability to do local or one-off programming at hotels is something that people don't give enough credit. There's a lot of single hotels out there that do incredibly well and can move a lot of boxes. So just because you can't get part of a national program because you're only in 2 states, 3 states, 6 states, doesn't mean that there's not amazing hotels in those 2 to 6 states that can be immense for your business. And then as you continue to grow into more states, being able to go and share with the national team about your successes in those hotels, about the marketing, about the training that you help bring into fruition for grab and go markets. Any of those things are really fruitful. So start off with one hotel and meeting the team there and talking about maybe you're starting off with that one hotel because they're in your backyard, and they want to have a local brand that they're doing business with. Maybe you're not a diversity on brand, but you have the local connection. So there's lots of different ways to entice the individual property to partner with you. And I think even if you're a large national chain, there are still those local opportunities that exist. And in some situations, the national buyer would be able to help with introductions. I don't think that's always the case, but I think knocking on doors, if you're an up and coming brand, is sometimes the way to go.
Nice. One question was on sustainability, like how important is sustainability really to hotel chains, and is it important enough to lead that with starting that with the pitch? For example, I mean, in off trade, we know that Target is really serious and is putting money where their mouth is. So like that, if you can share a couple of names that are really serious about this.
Yeah, I think every national chain is serious about it, especially in lodging. Maybe restaurants aren't at the forefront of sustainability being important. But to your point, I'm not sure I'd start the conversation with sustainability. I would still include it, but I'm not sure it's the way you open up the door. So in your pitch, when you're talking about the marketing and the tools behind the brands that you're submitting for where the team's consideration, talking about sustainability initiatives beyond the traditional things that the state of California and wine growers in California follow. If you have things that your company is doing that are unique, those are initiatives that I would certainly bring to light. Whether it's there's all sorts of different things, but certainly worth including. It's at the forefront for hotels specifically. I think taking excerpts from the hotel group's websites about their sustainability objectives can be helpful. Understanding how they're framing it and using their words and talking about your strategy and ethos as a company and how it aligns with that particular hotel group can be really succinct. I've seen people do that. I've also seen people who have their sustainability person come to the beverage meetings because it is of that importance. So definitely include in your presentation, definitely speak about it.
Nice. Let's go on other ways or other elements of the hotels, right? Like one of the questions was, what's the best way to approach banquet wine programs in top hotels?
Banquet programs are usually very heavily predicated on price. It's probably no surprise. Price, volume, availability, distribution, all of those things are going to be the key drivers. I think in a lot of cases, for entry level wines, they're going to want something that has very little retail visibility. And then if it is a more premium wine, then they're obviously going to want that name visibility, I think, in most cases. So kind of both ends of the spectrum there. But for the entry level tier, price is going to be king. Availability, no gaps in distribution, that sort of thing. No hiccups with availability, and then reinforcing it. Maybe it's a mid tier or a high tier banquet wine that you're submitting. Talking about what the education can look like to help your salespeople at the hotel level steer the guest towards that more premium offering instead of the one that is the base. What does that look like? Do you have success helping other hotel chains move the guest from the entry level wines to more premium wines? Do you have a sales incentive package that you've done at other hotels? What does that training look like for sales managers? I think speaking to all of that is really important.
One of the question was, after a hotel beverage program is in place, let's say you were lucky and you got a placement as a brand, directly you made the deal. What do you think is the best approach for distributors at the local level to ensure compliance and gain placements from the optional list?
Well, optional is optional. I always like to say that. I think sometimes people go in with a more stern approach at the local level, and that doesn't always pay off. I think bringing the wines with you to sample the leadership on, and or if they want to invite the bartender to also taste, I think having that program with you and saying, this wine is on your optional list. We're really proud that XYZ hotel group, liked it enough to consider it for this, and we'd like the opportunity.
So, Ivan, could you clarify just for some of the new brands out there, some of the small guys, what does that mean? Like, does it mean approved, but you still have to pitch?
Correct. Exactly. So there's and again, the nomenclature can change from hotel group to hotel group. But in a lot of situations, there's a recommended list that's incremental to wines by the glass that are expected to be poured at every hotel. So going in with that recommended list that was sent out by the home office and offering to do trainings and tastings and having that wine with you when you show up, or if you know the appropriate people, having that conversation by phone before you walk in the doors is really helpful. But justifying why it was on that list and compelling them locally to pick it up. Maybe it's, hey, let's give it a test for your pool program. Maybe it's a rosé for the summer, making it really easy. A lot of hotels might have the flexibility of doing a local LTO. So maybe it is a local being at their property. So maybe they're going to test it out at the outlet bar, the primary bar for the property, and pour it by the glass. Maybe there's a local contest that you could do to help invigorate it and get some excitement going. But certainly tasting, bringing it in, might be their first time seeing or getting familiar with that particular wine, and just essentially selling it into that hotel, but going in small. Maybe it is just, hey, would you want to do an LTO with this for your particular outlet? Don't go in there expecting the world, but offer a lot of different opportunities and certainly taste.
I think one of the things, we have this chicken and egg problem, right? Like, they need Southerns and the Budweisers of the world to distribute a product. And then, you can't pitch to Marriotts and Hiltons unless you have Southerns and Glazers of the world, right? How much of this is done at the brand level versus at the distribution level? Is it 80% really the brand guys who are working to get the placements, or are there the distributors who are getting the placements in?
In most cases, I don't think you need to be with a large distribution house. There's been a very few examples where I've heard someone being the distributor, needs to have a certain insurance rider to do a delivery at a property. I think those times are very few and far between. And it's certainly not my area of expertise, but in our world, we do align and we have wonderful partnerships with large distributors, but it doesn't mean that we aren't happy to also work with smaller one-off distributors as well. So as long as you're comfortable and sharing that list as a supplier, as a brand of who carries your wines and spirits, your beers in each market, and then have points of contact so that as a hotel chain might approve your brand or mandate it, that you are ready to go with, here we are, here's the list.
I've got some questions now from the people. So Ankita messaged me. So it's mainly for IMI, which is good. So we get some clarity on how IMI can help as well. Compliance is challenging with hotel space. So how do you recommend suppliers, distributors to work with hotel partners like yourself to increase program compliance? What is IMI's program compliance goal?
Our goal is our client's goal. I think first and foremost, and certainly compliance is key for what everyone's looking for. I think definitely working from the top down, taking guidance from your IMI point of contact and or the buyer, as opposed to going in with an iron fist at the local hotel level. If you have a mandated by the glass, a beer or a spirit, having that conversation with the buyer and your agency partner are, what can we do to rectify this? I don't think it's a one size fits all answer. I have a chain that I work with that started using an outside audit company to work on compliance, and the whole executive team is really on board with getting better compliance, and we've seen a tremendous shift in program adoption, and it's been great. That might not be the strategy for every hotel group, but if we can make a compelling argument about why hotels should follow the mandated program, and tell the story about why these brands were selected, then I think we'll see the adoption at individual properties. And that's something that we rely on our supplier and distributor partners to help with. But if there are issues with compliance and gaps, I think sharing that back with your agency partner and with the buyer in a helpful manner. For example, if you have the hotel list and then in column B is the feedback or the pushback that your colleagues have gotten from each of those hotels, that's something actionable that the buyer can go back and work on those issues with.
How does IMI handle marketing budgets designed for on-site activations?
So we collect voluntary support from our liquor, beer, wine, and non-alc partners for programs. The voluntary support can be used as our clients, the large national hotel groups or restaurant partners, as they see appropriate. And we always are happy to share and go into more detail about what those activations were, whether that was buying new menu books, whether it's what used to be known as captain's books that showcase the spirits when you sit down in a hotel lobby. Those are some of the tools that we've helped bring to fruition with the supplier investments. Other things could be, working with an outside mixologist to craft unique cocktails with the new mandated spirits. Maybe it's having a SOM come in and train a particular property because their wine knowledge has been really rated very poor, and they need some constant encouragement and reinforcement. So there's a variety of permissible things that those supplier investments can be used towards.
So maybe you can understand this, but I'm just reading it out. Do you include a wine if it does not fit in the criteria that was asked in the RFP, if it is a category leader and is compatible for that hotel group?
Yes. So if I understand the question correctly, like you have a very specific RFP that went out. Maybe it's from IMI, maybe it's otherwise, and it has very specific pricing, varietal stipulations and asks. If you have a wine that you think is of note and it still does not fit that criteria, 100% still include it. We have numerous times throughout the course of the program cycle, or even that initial audit process that buyer goes through, when they have an aha moment of something else that they maybe did not include in their RFP asks, or a particular noteworthy property might reach out, hey, we're looking for a Vermentino of this price point. Whatever the case might be, I would say definitely include it if it's something that you feel strongly about, whether it's in your presentation or your electronic submission. Yes is the answer.
Trying to understand your model and companies like yourself, how do you add value to the both parties? Can you elaborate a little bit on what do you do for the client, and how do you work with the suppliers, or how do you select your suppliers?
We work on behalf of our clients, and I do my best to constantly articulate that. It's not our intention to be gatekeepers. I think very oftentimes that's a role that we adopt because a client is looking for more of that, to be a crossing guard of communication, if you will. And it differs from client to client, and all those different elements. But we do our best to include everyone as much as possible when we do an RFP for a lodging client, or for any client. And to rise to the top, if you're an up and coming brand, it's about building that relationship. And this is part of my going away message as well. And I really tried to harp on that. If you have brands that you want adopted in the national accounts arena, or taken seriously by a buyer, building that relationship leading up to the RFP and every other time, building and maintaining is really crucial. Liquid to lips is a real thing. So having them taste that product. Maybe it's a formal meeting at their office that's not during the RFP time, but in 6 months you're going to be getting that RFP email. So take advantage when you can get that FaceTime. But more specific to your question, pitch to a hotel chain. We're the largest third-party beverage marketing agency. We're a fiduciary agency. We work on behalf of our client. And I feel like I sometimes disappoint suppliers when I tell them that we do not have a vested interest in their particular brand over another one. We're just there for our clients, who are the hotel groups. So if someone picks one Chardonnay over another, it's, we're here to help them find the best solution for their business. And when you do your RFP submissions, and you're a supplier hoping to be considered for a program or something that's on the IMI radar, so to speak, talking about sustainability, talking about diversity, or your accolades, even if you're presenting it for one hotel group, it's still something that's on our radar for other consideration as well in a lot of situations. Especially if you have unique factors for your brands, it's something that we're going to be paying attention to. And if you haven't met your agency partner, I think just asking for time to walk through the portfolio in a virtual meeting, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. If you want to send samples, that's great as well. But making sure that you take the time to bring that person up to speed. We're very quick and eager to share details as much as possible about our client programs, especially if there's new, wonderful, delicious things that they should be encompassing in their strategy.
All right, Evan. Anything else?
No, I hope it was beneficial. Thank you, everyone, for your time today, and thank you for everyone's efforts that go into RFPs and partnering with our hotel clients, and the ongoing conversations that we have throughout the course of the year, and certainly happy holidays as well. You asked me about 2024. I think my outgoing piece of recommendation would just be continue building the relationships, not just during the RFP, but taking advantage of other opportunities that might arise. So that's my parting words.